Hi, my name is Aaron Bonk, and I am thrilled to present the November challenge for the Whip Cracking 101 Facebook group. Now, this is going to be a bit of a different challenge. It's not so much a long sequence of whip cracking, it's more of basics. I get asked all the time about the technique that I use to juggle 3 whips. So we're not going to be juggling 3 whips. Don't worry, this is going to be a 1 whip exercise, but it's going to help you build the foundation towards that and get more precise with your tosses and catches and lead you in the direction of what you need to know if you'd like to juggle 3 whips. Most people who've seen my videos see me use these. This is a 46-inch bullwhip made by Adam Winrich. And they're fairly specialized, and that's what I usually use. I know that most people don't have that. So for this exercise, I'll be using a 6-foot bullwhip made by John Peterman of JP's Custom Paracord. It's got a 10-inch handle, and it's got some heft to it. Now, what I'm about to show you can be done with many different sizes of whips. As long as you can throw it and get a good full spin on it, you can use a performance hybrid. Ideally, I would use a 5-foot bullwhip for this with a 10 to 12-inch handle, but I don't have one of those with me, so we're gonna use this. Now, each of these patterns is repeatable. Like I said, they're not a long sequence like we've had in other challenges. That's because repetition and building foundation is really the theme to each of these levels. So if you're at level 1 and that's where you're at, or you're at level 2 or level 3, try seeing how many times in a row you can do it and just go back and forth, because each one you can just tack on more catches, more throws. Try to get to 10 runs of the sequence, or 20 if you even can. Whatever your target mark is, try to hit that. And you're going to find that once you get close to your goal, if your goal is 10 catches or 10 run-throughs of the sequence, when you get to number 9, you might psych yourself out. You might get so excited that you end up dropping. That happens to me, that happens to everybody. Professionals, amateurs, everybody. That happens. And learning to work through that is what will move you on to the next level and let you move forward and build a strong foundation. You may be wondering when to try to move on to the next level. And everybody has their different gauges for when they're ready. Some people just say when they feel ready, when they feel comfortable, when the first sequence feels kind of easy or isn't as much of a challenge. I think a good thing to go by is when you can do 10 in a row without stopping, without dropping, then you're ready to move on to the next level. So when I can get it 10 times in a row, then I'm ready to start working on level 2. When I can do that whole sequence 10 times in a row, then start working on level 3. So I encourage you to challenge yourself to keep going. See how many you can get. Set a goal, see if you can get that. Once you do, go even higher. It's up to you. You get your points just for getting the initial sequence, but going further, like any of these challenges, is going to make you a better whip artist. For level 1, the order is basically figure 8. So front crack, back crack, toss to the same hand. And when you catch it, you do a setup spin. I'll talk about that in a bit. Do a setup spin to another figure 8, you toss to the other hand. And you do a figure 8 there, toss to the same hand, figure 8, back to the original hand, and finish off with a figure 8. I'm going to talk my way through that while doing it as best as possible. So, figure 8 to a toss to the same hand. Figure 8 to a toss to the other hand. Figure 8 to a toss to the same hand. Figure 8 to a toss to the other hand. Finish with a figure 8. Now I'm assuming that you all know the slow figure 8 already, and that's a forward crack and then a reverse crack. The difficulties come with the tosses, getting a complete spin so that you catch the whip correctly and are ready to go into another crack. We'll do that in level 2, but we're setting up for that in this level. The things I like to focus on while doing this is that your toss, you don't think about your toss when you're about to let it go. Your toss happens before you do the second crack. So before you do your reverse crack, you have the whip here, you do your first crack, bring it up, your toss begins here. When you bring your arm back, your elbow should be pointed up and back directly behind you. You'll follow through. Your hand will make a big C motion here. This C sets you up for the toss. And what you're doing is bringing it around in a circle. You're going to point your handle, the tip of the handle, directly at the ground, parallel to your leg, as you follow through up to the toss. And as your hand gets a little bit above shoulder level, that's when you let go of the whip, like this. You'll notice you go first crack, second crack, into the toss. What you don't want to do is crack and pause and then think about the toss. It's one continuous motion through that crack up into the air. Now watch for the C shape straight into the toss after the first cattleman's crack. A very important thing about the follow through leading up to the toss. If you see me from the back, I point my elbow back and bring my hand straight back in a vertical plane parallel to my body. You don't want to go horizontal. If your elbow points to the side and your hand goes out to the side, you'll put sideways spin on the whip and it will come around and wrap your legs, wrap your body. So when you get that second crack, make sure you bring it straight down behind you to point down and through, rather than out. I'll demonstrate. This is what happens if you go sideways on it. This is what not to do. I think the hardest part about this is getting the proper spin on the whip when it's in the air so that you catch it at the right place. Here's how you should catch it. You want your arm about 90-degree angle. You want your arm up and a 90-degree angle at your elbow, your hand palm up, ready to catch it as it comes down into your hand. You don't want to be reaching up for it. You don't want to be down here. The ideal is to get the whip to land right here. When you're trying to get the handle to land here, this is the angle you want the whip to land in your hand at. You want the thong of the whip pointing up to the sky at about this angle. Later on in level 2, this becomes important because as you catch it, the thong of the whip will continue down into a circle to lead straight into a crack. This is the time when you develop that. So it's important that you get a complete rotation. It's actually about 1 1/3 spin total when you throw the whip. I find it's going to help to get used to just throwing your whip in the air, getting used to how it spins so that you can get that complete rotation plus a little bit. I think a good way to do that is to start with it behind you and just pull it up. And get used to how it spins in the air. Maybe try really spinning it really fast and get 2 spins. And maybe try spinning it slow, so you barely get any spin at all. You need to get used to how the whip spins while it's in the air. Your goal is for it to land here. The most important part about tosses and catches is precision, is learning to throw so that it lands in the right place. When your throws are good, your catches will be easier. If you're having trouble catching, it can be because you're throwing all over the place. So building that precision is important. Also important is being able to find the handle in the air, tracking where it is, because this is where you want to catch. And in fact, you even want to think about where on the handle you want to catch. You don't want to catch too far up, because then you'll have a hard time getting your cracks in. If you crack the whip holding it here, then that's where you should be trying to catch it. I actually end up catching it here and maybe letting it slide down to the knob a little bit. This is where I like to do my cracks from. I get a good grip here. The knob helps me from letting it just slip out of my hand. But this general area is where you should be trying to catch. You should be seeing the handle in the air, and this is what you're trying to catch. Now technically, each hand does two different throws of the whip. You throw it to the same hand, and then you throw across to the other hand, and vice versa. When you're throwing to the same hand, again, you'll do that C, point at the ground with the tip of the handle, and straight up to release just above your shoulder here, and then catch at about the same place. When you're throwing across, you do that same C, point at the ground, and bring the whip across your body. So you're coming from here to here and releasing just above the opposite shoulder. I'll show you the first one, and then I'll show you the second one. And when you catch the whip, there are two things you can do. You can either catch it right into a crack. That's a bit more advanced. We'll be covering that in level 2. But what I want you to do for level 1 is what I call a setup spin. This is a term I borrowed from juggling, where when you go from one crazy pattern to another pattern, you can either switch right into it, or you can give yourself a normal toss to get your mind and body ready to go into that next pattern, whatever it may be. That's called a setup toss. So this is what I call a setup spin. It's when you catch the whip, but then bring it around one more time to set up for that next crack. I'll demonstrate. Crack, toss, catch, setup spin into that next crack. Without the setup spin, it would look like this. You may or may not be already aware of this, but working on this on your non-dominant hand, for me that's left, for most people it is, for some it isn't. Working on your non-dominant hand is of course going to be much more difficult. I recommend practicing that side at least twice as much as your dominant hand, because it's going to be weird. It's not going to be as precise as the hand you're used to cracking in all the time. That's what jugglers do. We work that side even more than the other side.